Well, good morning, everybody. Back to work on Project Mockingbird. Last go around, you saw that we sprayed the Evercoat 4-to-1 super high build primer on this. Liked it, went on okay. Coverage was decent. The texture when it was finished was a little rougher than I'd hope. But the paint data sheet doesn't say anything about reducing it. I typically have reduced other stuff by about 10%. It seems to help, but didn't say that I could, so I didn't. I'm kind of wondering now if I did, if I have any problems. So if you guys have ever reduced that Evercoat 4-to-1 stuff and not had any troubles, let me know. But I like to follow directions just a little bit. But I think in this case, we're going to start sanding this. I was also warned that the polyester primer sets up like concrete the longer you let it sit. So I may have my work cut out for me. I used a polyester primer before, the Clausen's, and I didn't have any trouble sanding it. So we're going to find out how easily or how good that stuff sands now that it's been drying for actually 2 weeks. It's been that long since I've been out here. I know that the videos don't seem that far apart, but I took a little vacation in between there. It has some videos backed up in my log, but we're going to now sand this once it's been drying for 2 weeks. Anybody asking yourself, why did you let it dry that long? One, I was on vacation. Two, I can because this isn't a body shop. I don't have to have this car out of here tomorrow. I have time to let that primer cure and dry, off gas, whatever you want to call it, and totally set up so it actually shrinks completely, or if it may not shrink at all. I may be just being critical, but I've been burned in the past by the ghost sand marks coming back through in a paint job 6 to 8 months after it's done. That is the most annoying thing ever, and I couldn't figure it out years ago why I was doing it, but I started doing a process of letting my body filler, my primers, my paint, final finish, everything dry for several weeks or as long as I could before sanding it, and it seemed to help a whole lot. So I guess it's just stuck in my head that way. So that's the beginning. Let's get this thing going. I'm going to show you the steps here. We're going to start blocking this thing out and get this thing how quick it can sand out, how good it works. That's what we're about to find out. Well, from here it looks nice and even. The coverage looks pretty decent, but as we're combating here a little bit, the texture of this stuff. Let's see if I get the camera to focus, but you can see that it looks a little bit rough. I mean, it's not horrible, but I like for the stuff to lay out a little smoother. It makes my life easier to sand. But anyway, that's what we're going to try to combat. I have my 2-foot long linear block. I'm learning to really love this thing. I have learned this levels off more than this does. I mean, I've loved my Durablock. She's been my buddy since the beginning, I think. But I'm finding that I'm using this more and more and really able to get the panel much flatter, quicker with this block here. It takes a little bit of finesse and getting used to, but I'd say at this point I'm happy with that investment. And I've always had these little blocks for really tight radiuses. Never use just your fingers. You will leave lines. You want to try to blend things out best you can. This disperses the weight or the pressure of your fingers and reduces that chance. Those are the 3 blocks I plan to use. This is all fitted with 220 grit sandpaper. As you can tell, I don't got a whole lot left because I did this whole car. And I've actually even got my back in Blackbird up to this point now. All the high build primer, 2 coats of it on that one. So once I get this one done, I get to have some more fun and do it again. But that's a different day, different story, different video. But what we're going to do is get started here. Got my sandpaper laid out, a favorite drink. And if this is a guide coat here. Same thing. I've never really used this before till this car. I'm really beginning to like it. I normally don't use any guide coat at all. I know that sounds crazy, but I can see the difference in the colors of the primer and the stuff I used to use, so I didn't need that. This doesn't really change a whole lot. So this has been my best friend. But put a really thin coat on the area you plan to sand and then work it out and see what it looks like. So that's step 1. Get this on there and then we'll start blocking. Okay. Correction, step 1. There we go. Now you've seen this stuff before. This is that Duragold black guide coat. Pretty user-friendly, but pick your panel and just put a nice thin layer on. This is going to highlight all the areas that I have managed to get wrong up to this point. And I'm sure there's going to be a few of them. You're going to highlight sand marks or pits or maybe pinholes, etc. But it really cuts pretty quick. It doesn't clog sandpaper like your spray-on style guide coats. And it really covers the entire panel. It's a little heavy, but it's okay. It comes off pretty easily. All right, there we go. Now, I'm going to start with a big block. This is a 220 grit. As you can tell, it's not a new piece. We're going to find out how quick this actually cuts. Now, I'm going to let this thing just glide from here to here and try to follow that radius and try to drag it as far as I can to keep things blended out. Now the front of this fender is really curved, so I can't get it with this, but I want to go as far as I can. I want to change direction now and go back the other way. Now, I guess we'll call it 2 passes back and forth, but you can see the highlighting of that textured paint. If that paint would have laid out smoother, I'd be in pretty good source at this point. Maybe a little low spot here or there, but it's really leveling off pretty quick. I'm not working that hard, so to say this stuff setups like concrete, I don't think so. It's not that bad to sand, it's cutting quick. And this is a really long block, so this takes a lot more effort to cut it. So 2 passes, I'm almost already cut through the texture. I don't think this stuff sands too bad at all. This fender has some transitions. Of course, it's kind of radius this way, and of course radius this way. Then I got this lip that kicks out that comes out this way. So this is kind of a complex shape to actually sand out. But this is where the area I'm good. I don't need to sand there any longer, but I need to blend it all out. So I got to keep going over it, but that's what it's going to look like when it's corrected and done. Okay, now that's about maybe 4 or 5 passes across this. Really starting to come out pretty good. Getting a little thin right here. Picks up a little bit of darkness in the camera, but I don't think that's looking too bad. But I'm gonna keep working this thing back and forth, but like I said, I'm trying to use this block as much as possible. Last time I blocked this fender, I used this before I primed it. And I'm wondering if that's where this stuff's coming from. That's the thing, this thing really makes a difference. If I were to sand this fender right now with this block, it would level everything off and take all these spots out of it and be flat and looking good by the guide coat. But by the time I put some paint on it, you'll see just a little bit of a ripple. You look down the side. This is really correcting that. So moving forward, I'll be using this block a lot more frequently because I think it helps remove these spots from the fender. And the same idea, I'm trying to go as far as I can without gouging the paint from body line to body line. This is such a goofy shape, it's kind of tricky, but I kind of keep it like this, and I can work it up to that body line. Same thing, I'm not putting a lot of force on it, but the idea is if you keep cutting it till you blend all of it out till it all disappears. Looking pretty good. Looking at that up close, I can see a little better what's going on. Just about to burn through here. I'm not through the primer yet. We're getting pretty close. So I got to watch what I'm doing here. But again, the thing I'm really finding is the texture of the paint. I'm not finding any sand marks, I think, poking through or highlighted with my guide coat. So I think the body working underneath was in pretty good shape. It's mostly just working the texture of the paint out. And of course, this is blending all the stuff underneath. Again, probably shouldn't have used this block. It actually looks really good if you finish a car with this block. It's not a bad product, but this I think is actually a little bit better. I'm gonna keep working the fender. I may go ahead and guide coat the door because I'm gonna kind of sand between the fender and the door at the same time to keep it on the same plane kind of thing. And then of course now I'll work on the top of the fender, then the hood, the cowl, and then work my way around the entire car. But you get the idea. Work that block from body line to body line, 35, 45 degrees, cut it this way, and come back and cut it this way. And then keep working the panel forward and backwards. Don't stay in one spot. You'll cause it to be a low spot, but keep working it from end to end. And I'll show you how to work the front of the fender here. In this case, I will probably use this block. It has a little better flexibility to match the contour, so that's just a short area. And the really tight radiuses, that's when this is going to come into play. So I'll go ahead and start working on the front corner of the fender here now. Now, it's still the same technique. This block is a good block, but it seems to flex a little better on the two planes. You'll see how much quicker it's cutting because not as large a surface area, and this does flex a little more. Now this car being painted white probably doesn't have to be that critical, but it's good practice. So when you do a car that's a dark color or metallic, you've got some experience in getting things really super flat. If you go back, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, the technology of sanding blocks are not nearly as nice as they are now. This would have been like the best thing ever compared to what was available. Now, of course, I think this is more gooder, but that's just how it works. People are always tweaking and advancing and making improvements. Continuous improvement, right? Same as learning all this stuff. Every time you do it, you learn something new. So that's actually cut pretty quick. We'll keep working this here. And again, don't just do this or just this in one spot. You will cause a low spot right here in the middle. You got to keep working it like this to get to the point where this stuff fades out completely. We're getting close, but got to keep going. Check that out there. A little spot here and a little bit right there. And the other thing here to keep in mind, we don't want to burn through the primer, or especially down the bare metal, because then we got to put more paint back on the car, which then takes more time and it costs more money. So the idea is do your body work really good underneath so you don't burn through the primer. You start to see it coming close, that white primer underneath, but I don't see bare metal, and I don't really have poked through yet. Now again, this is just 220 grit sandpaper. Once I'm happy with it, I'm going to go over everything here with 320. So now I'll go ahead and finish the top part of this fender, then we'll move up to 320 and show you what that does. Oh, one more little tip here. I've probably seen this before, but the paper gets a little clogged up. And I'm still using the same piece I started with. You can wipe all that stuff right off with the old microfiber cloth, and she's good to go again and saves you a few bucks. Now the next area we're going to work on, this has a radius you can see curves this way, curves this way, and what you can't see, it also kind of dips down and comes back up to the fender. No way this guy is going to fit in here and do any good sanding that out whatsoever. This is where these little foam, still medium, not quite as stiff as this, but close. It's a little softer, so it has a little more pliability. But you don't ever want to just go at it with just your fingers. You're going to leave grooves, it's going to look ripply. This is about the best I've learned it's going to work for me. They work really nice. So still follow the same idea. Go from body line and kind of blend it to the area I've already worked from body line to body line. And changing direction, not just back and forth. You want to change direction. Now again, if I wasn't fighting the texture of this paint, I would be done in no time. So I need to learn how to get this paint to lay out smoother, and I think I would really like it. Again, we're using 220 sandpaper right now, so it does cut pretty quick. So it does make kind of short work of it. This stuff didn't really set up like concrete, but the idea is that if it really is that hard and doesn't shrink, and it was a little more effort to sand, I'm okay with it because I know what's underneath here is going to be a good solid foundation. Nice. This is polyester primer. Urethanes, the other ones, I do think they do sand easier than this stuff, but this is not bad at all. And something else you'll notice here, I'm going to jump up here to 320 here in a second. Normally I don't change sandpapers until the entire car is done. All 220 on the entire car. Then go through and then change up to your next sandpaper. But for demonstration purposes, we're going to bump up to 320 and move into it. But you'll see something here. My sanding technique, I never introduce water or wet sanding on anything except when I do my cutting and buffing at the very end of the paint process. By then, I feel like I got enough protection from water that I'm not worried about it. So wet sanding is a technique that's been used for a long time. I used to do it, but the idea of introducing water to your bodywork or bare metal, that's like you're fighting rust. The whole reason you build this car over again is it rusted out. So I'd rather reduce any opportunity for water to get into the bodywork or start festering under my paint. That's one of the reasons why. Another reason why is right now when I'm sanding, look at this stuff here. This dust, it wipes right up. If you mix that with water, it kind of turns into a slurry and compacts in little corners and crevices. It's a little harder to clean up. So just my opinion, this is easier to clean up. But wet sanding isn't necessarily wrong. It's just not something that you'll see me do. Because even me and my boy Louie, he likes the wet sand. It works real good for him. Hey, we'll probably never agree on that. But again, it's not wrong. It's just not my technique, and you won't see me doing it. Alright. Now see, I actually sand up pretty quick. While I'm telling you a little story, I've got that basically done. Now we need to change up our blocks at 320 and do it all again. So what's that looking like here? Getting a little thin here. It really shows up bright on the camera, but in person you can barely see that. It's kind of interesting. I'll keep that in mind in the future. Here, same thing, getting a little thin. So what I'm saying, you need to be aware of that. Like I said, we're not going to, normally I would sand the entire car all to the 320 mark and then change 220 mark and then change my sandpaper progressively lighter. And what I'm using, this is stuff I buy on Amazon or eBay, about $25-ish a roll, plus or minus a couple bucks for shipping. So I try to buy 2 or 3 rolls at a time. And the size is typically labeled on it. So we're going to bump up to 320. And I want to show you a little bit of 600. You can actually sand this whole car with 600 dry, doing the same technique, using the same block, using everything. Especially if you're going to paint this a metallic color, I would probably stop at 600. Now, being that I'm going to paint this car white, 320 is probably sufficient. It's going to work, but we're going to go ahead and bump it up anyway and hit a little bit of the 600. But I'm going to do some 320 on here next. I'm going to learn you a little something here. These sanding blocks are made out of foam. Look at that adhesive. It sticks pretty good. Now, there's some cases where that when you go to peel this stuff off, it comes off in little tiny pieces. And that makes her real bare. So what I'm going to tell you is, if you go right now and put this directly on that sanding block, you will not get it off without destroying the paper or the block. So what I normally do is I do a little something like this right here. Get you a piece that's long enough. Hold about so long. Tear it off. Look at that. See? And do exactly what you think you shouldn't do. Put that right there on your shirt. It takes just a little bit of the dust and cuts the adhesive down just enough that when you go to peel this off later, it will save you all kinds of time and salvage your block. And I assure you, as long as it's some decent paper, this is Duragold and some of the brands they sell on Amazon, the adhesive is still strong enough that it still stays on in place. But do a little experimenting. If you have problems with sticking on the pad, try doing that. Basically reduce the adhesive just a little bit. Sanding blocks are loaded with our 320 sandpaper. Now, you can go as far as putting just a small, like maybe a light guide coat on here, just to make sure you've covered everything with 320, because it all feels real smooth to the touch now. Now, we know we got it leveled off, but how do you know you got everything sanded with 320? Well, that's what we're going to use this a little bit of guide coat again, just the same. This stuff could really kind of work wonders for me. I'm really liking it. But same technique, follow it out. Until you erase all the guide coat off of this and then follow suit on the whole thing. But this is like the 320 paper. it'll cut this stuff off pretty quick. I've only a couple passes now. Look at this. Now up here, I've already cleaned it off. Now there, I still need to sand some more. I went over it. That tells me I need to keep going with the 320. You see how quick this is going now because I've already got the shape filed out with the 220. Now we're just blending and smoothing everything out to a finer grit to ensure we don't have sanding marks bleeding through our final top coat. So the question is, when do you stop sanding? Well, by the time you erase all the guide coat off of here. Yeah, just about got it. Do the front of the fender here with this. Move it like so. You can see then, this goes pretty quick. Now basically there, you see there, probably less than 2 minutes. Top of that fender now is all at 320 and ready for the next coat of paint if you want to stick with just a solid color. But that went really quick. That's down to 320 now. Now what I've run into though, I burned through. You can see here that's some bare metal. I don't want to touch that, but we'll have to do in any areas. A little bit of bare metal there and there. Those will have to be touched up with an epoxy primer. So normally I'll go ahead and get the whole car sanded and come through this. And since this is finished with 320 or finer, you just put a really thin coat of epoxy on that. Let it dry, a couple days I like to do. And then just hit it all with 320 and blend the edge of it out. And then it'd be ready for paint. Or 320, 600, whatever you stopped at. Your last final grit of sandpaper. Or if you goober up on the epoxy, it's a little bit rough, you could start with 220. But some of that epoxy doesn't like to sand. But anyway, the bare metal spots, the 3 or 4 I have here on this fender, will need to be touched up with epoxy. But other than that, that would be ready for our sealer coat and ready for paint. I wouldn't recommend going sealer over a bare metal area and then going to color. You'll find that the epoxy just reacts a little funny sometimes to that metal. I would suggest spot priming, lightly sanding or scuffing that area, and then sealing the entire panel. Next thing would be change the 600 grit, but you get the idea. Do the same thing, put a real thin coat of guide coat on. That's when you know when you're done sanding and everything. It looks really, really nice. And 600, you'd be ready to put like a metallic paint job on top of that. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you would see it, I need to do the entire car this way. So that's what I'm gonna keep on working on here behind the scenes. And then just that was so much fun. I got another one to do the same thing too. But nonetheless, this block party will be coming to an end soon, putting some paint on both of these. So there you go. Hope that sheds some light on the blocking process of building a Firebird or a car, any car. All this applies to all your different types of primers and your steps in the process. You see the sanding block. All those techniques can work for about any car, not just Firebirds, of course. But hopefully that sheds some light on that subject. Now, speaking of subjects, I have things popping up. The stack gauge set, July is just about over. It hasn't showed up yet, but should be here sometime soon, so don't worry. I didn't forget about you. I just don't got it yet. Once I do get it, depending on where we're at in this chaos, I don't want to mess up everything, but we're going to get that hooked up, tested. I may just open the box and do an inspection on it to show you, and then we'll work on hooking it up once we're a little further into the project now. But that's going to be coming up here pretty soon. I've got the Ram Air parts all ordered for the Black and Blackbird, so I want to show you how to install that, make that functional. We've got to modify the hood a little bit. I've been told it can be a bit of a nightmare to get that thing operational, but I think it's just a cool touch. So I'll show you what parts you need to buy if you bought the kit that I did that did not come with that comprehensive kit, and then where you can get them from, stuff like that. And then I guess we'll keep on doing some more videos and plugging along and getting these cars back on the road and sharing the journey with you and showing you how it can be done. It takes a little time, and you can really make an aero straight car I'm not sure if we call it arrow straight. If you guys watch high-speed film of an arrow, it's not straight. So maybe we should do laser straight. We're high-tech around here. We're going to do laser straight body panels. So anyway, I've rambled on enough. Appreciate you following me on the journey of these old cars here. Thank you for watching. Help me grow this channel. Please share with your friends when it's going to happen. YouTube's not the best at promoting good stuff. Normally the stuff that people don't want to watch, like blowing things up and tearing things up. It just won't do that here. So anyway, hope you appreciate what I'm doing here. Anything you'd like to see, let me know in the comments just the same. And we will catch you guys, gals, next time.